Welcome back to Seeds.
Welcome to Seeds. Okay, so Valentine's Day is coming up.
Yes.
And we know that so much is centered around Valentine's Day and the commercialism and who has love in their life and who doesn't have love in their life. And there's so many people who, because of all of the marketing with Valentine's Day, they start to feel lonely if they're not in love with somebody or so let's talk about that because I'm single.
I'm not.
Well, I'm single. And I guess this is probably a good time for you and I, because you and I have had many conversations about love and about what love is, what love isn't. To you, well, I'm gonna interview you.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So to you, what? Okay, let's talk about what we think the majority of people think love is, and let's go from there.
I don't even know where to start with that. Like that's a pretty big question because love means so much different things to so many different people. If you're talking about in the sense of what it should look like a Hallmark card or a romance movie, I don't think that's the true ideal of what love really is.
But isn't that what so many people sort of buy into? Like, I know growing up, I watched Young and the Restless, and like Victor Newman and Nikki Newman were like the pinnacle of, you know, what love is, this angst and all of this up and down and all this kind of stuff. So much is centered around that.
But yeah, I think that's glamorized love. I don't think that's what, and I don't even like to use the word real love, but I don't think that's what love is.
Yeah.
I think that is like the way they, I don't know, how do I say, Hollywoodize it.
I think there's a lot of...
There's so much more facets to it. So like it's easier for me to say what love is not than what love is. Because
me too.
Love is a feeling, so you can't really describe that feeling. But I know a lot of what love is not. So
I think with that, there's so much conditions centered around love. Like, if you...
But you see, that's another thing I was thinking about the other day. I think that love is conditional, but it's also... Love is not conditional, but it's also not unconditional.
So it's not... You don't think it's not unconditional?
I don't think it's... I don't think it's unconditional, and I don't think it's conditional. That's what I'm saying. It's in its own place.
Okay, well, tell me about that.
Because if you think about love as even being unconditional, that's a condition. So you have to work to make it unconditional.
That's actually quite profound.
It makes it
hold on. I need a minute. I need a minute. So even love, because this has never come up in our discussion.
No, it hasn't.
Hold on.
But I think about it the other day.
Even love being unconditional
is a condition.
Is a condition within itself.
Yeah, that you have to force yourself to get to. Whereas I think love just is.
But then hold on a second. So if you have to, okay, so if even the pursuit of getting to it being unconditional, if you've achieved that state of being, then in that state of being, are there any conditions? If you've truly arrived at that state of being, and again, I know for everybody, you know, whatever that means for everybody is going to be whatever it means. We're on kind of like, I think we're on our own sort of personal journeys in pursuit of truth or whatever that is. But you're right. I think, or are you right? I don't know.
Well, because the way I look at it, okay, when you try and say that love is unconditional, that means that when you have conditions in your mind, right? But yeah, I think what I was trying to explain is that because love, it technically is conditional too, because love is different for everybody. So what they consider unconditional might be different from what you and I consider unconditional. So then so you're involved with someone who has a different condition or a look of unconditional love in their mind. What you're doing may not produce what they consider unconditional, which becomes a condition.
Okay, well, let's talk about conditions then first. Okay, so conditions, like if you don't do this, or if you do this, and this means you love me, or this means you doesn't. But isn't there a place? Like, actually, I said I want to talk about conditions, but I think it's really unconditions. Isn't there a place where, regardless of what anybody does or doesn't do, that love can still reign. Love can still prevail within the individual. That, so I don't know. I just feel that there's, it's not even that I just feel it. In many ways, like I've for me, it's been a struggle or a challenge and a goal to get to a place where I can love somebody regardless of what they do, regardless of what I see. I think love and desire
are two different things.
Are two very different things, but they're so closely connected. So your desire, so what you want someone to do, what you expect based on how it makes you feel, right? We talked about the whole thing about, Tracy and I, we've talked about fields.
Yes.
They're looking at it in terms of two fields. So you're in a field and there's a field that's fenced in. And I think a lot of the times from the time we're young, we operate within this fenced field as it relates to love. Is that Murphy?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the dog, sorry.
Okay. This fenced field as it relates to love, in that there's parameters or there's standards or there's expectations or things like that. So, but then there's a gate. And through that gate, there's another field, and that field has no boundaries and no parameters. So therefore, no expectations, no desires even in terms of what you want or what you don't want. So
I think you have it, yeah, and I understand exactly what you're saying, but I think maybe, I don't know if it's because we're in this form right now, why, I just think it's really hard for a lot of people, including myself, to see. I'm not gonna lie, I wonder if even unconditional love does exist, because I think being unconditional is a condition as well. And I'm so, I just, yeah.
See, and
I see it as unconditional, even it being unconditional. Not that don't get me wrong. I know that there's a higher sense of love, but I think that, I don't know how to explain it, but love just is. And like you said, no matter what, you can love somebody condition free, I think, to a point.
But then it's conditioned.
But then it becomes conditioned because there's going to always be some kind of obstacle, and maybe that's the thing that we're trying to always overcome. But there will always present an obstacle that you have to fight to get back to this unconditional love.
But that's not impossible.
It's not impossible.
And maybe it's not even to get back to. Maybe again, that's what we talk about.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what we talk about, everyone's experience, depending on what degree or what level of the journey they're on in that is where they say that. But for me, I think we're talking about this. I think we are. Saying the same thing,
we are.
But because I totally agree with you about love just being is. But it's that isness that I believe is devoid of condition. That's exactly what I think. I think you're saying the exact same thing. But I think that isness, when you say love just is, I think the is exactly where there is no condition. Right. So it's not you're doing love in that space. You're being love in that space. You are love in that space. So therefore, no conditions, like conceptually, no conditions would apply, in my opinion, in that space. No conditions would actually be there in that when you've truly arrived in that space. I think what you're saying, though, is that, okay, you could arrive in that space, but then are there things that come up where you're talking about always getting back to that space? I guess my question is that
if you can exist in that space always.
If you can exist in that space always. And I think let's say if we apply it to, okay, I don't have children.
Okay.
You have a beautiful daughter. Can we say her name?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so Michaela. Beautiful, beautiful daughter. And so here's the thing. Now, Michaela, doesn't mean that in moments that, you're dealing with her or disciplining her or whatever it is, that she may do things that could get you upset. Yeah. But is there ever a time that even in your upsetness, that you could say you don't love her unconditionally without conditions?
But no, absolutely, I love her no matter what.
No matter what.
No
There's
matter
nothing
what.
that she could do.
No.
There's nothing that she could not do.
Nothing.
That where you would feel any form of connectedness to not loving her.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so maybe we're getting somewhere.
I think that maybe because, well, I see what you're saying, but in the unconditional sense, yes, I can see it through. For me, that's the only time I've really experienced it was with my daughter.
Okay.
Because where she's concerned, no matter what she does, she could do whatever she wants to. I will love her right through it. Now, going back into the male-female or the relationship between a man and a woman, or a man and a man, woman and woman, doesn't matter, like a love relationship with adults, I just see that I think it's very difficult, because even when people are expressing that they have unconditional love for people, they still put conditions on them.
Difficult?
Yeah.
But not
It's not impossible. No, it's not impossible. See, I just have never seen it.
And
I haven't seen it.
And maybe our children,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have children. It hasn't worked out that way. I've always, would have loved the idea of having children. And I think something that children bring to you is a lesson, an instant lesson in unconditional love.
Yes.
Okay, so for someone like myself,
yeah,
who doesn't have children, I've been on this constant pursuit of finding, experiencing unconditional love.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about, as you know, a conscious pursuit.
Yeah, as I feel with my daughter. Yeah.
Exactly. And I do, in my experience, I do feel that if again, on the premise that children are here, or the experience of having children, loving children, are here to give us this instant lesson of unconditional love. And I see that with you. I see that with my other friends and family who have children, and with their children, this even myself without children, this sense of unconditional love that I have with other children. I am of the opinion that unconditional love can be had for anyone in any type of relationship, because like that of your children, it is, to me, it's a state of being. It's
and you're absolutely right. I think it's just that I've never seen it. In my experiences, it's only been with children.
It's only been with children.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, we're always searching for that. Where it's two-way and it's so pure is with me and my daughter. I haven't experienced it with anyone else. Not in its full scope. It's gone close. It's gotten really close.
How do you know that they themselves are not operating in, how do you know that they are not actually operating and having unconditional love for you? How are you measuring that?
I'm measuring it
that there's still conditions there. How are you measuring that?
Well, how am I measuring that there's still conditions? The way I look at it is by even putting restrictions on me in my life, or even by having, like, playing games or playing head games, or trying to manipulate situations. That to me is conditional. It's not flowing naturally.
But are you deciding that manipulation is happening, or like, again, like, these are your projections. These are
that's what I said in the beginning. It does come down to people.
So my thing is, though, I think, okay, so let's sort of go off there for a minute, because I think that that's measuring somebody, what you feel is what we could say are somebody else's, whether or not they're loving us unconditional.
Yes.
I want to keep it, if we can, focused on, because there's so many variables. There's so many variables, whether or not our assessment of it is right, is our perception of it right, is it, again, us having certain expectations of them, and therefore if they're not.
But I think that's a two-way street. I think that they're having certain expectations. From my experience, I'm only speaking from my experience. I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But from my experience, they're looking for expectations too, which makes it a condition.
But does that mean they don't love you?
Oh, no. Well, okay, because you know what? Because yes, I believe you could still love them unconditionally. Okay, well then I think that's the question. Even though someone can love you unconditionally,
Okay.
I'm trying to articulate it. Even though someone can love you unconditionally and have that full love with them wherever they go, they are in love at that, always in being in love where you're concerned, they're still putting conditions down on you.
Conditions on you for a certain thing to walk a certain way,
yes,
a certain type of relationship that you have?
Exactly. That's what I think. Maybe that's the condition, is the type of relationship that they're looking for. Whereas if it's totally unconditional, they would just go with the flow and let it be what it will be, instead of manipulating it or trying to manipulate it.
See, I see it that I think we're talking about two different things.
Maybe.
I think we're talking about two different things, in that I think that regardless of what the relationship looks like, if it's just going to be a friendship, or if it's going to be a marriage, or if it's going to be whatever, that regardless of what it looks like, you can still accept. I think acceptance is key. Accepting where a person is at, but you can still know and
that
feel
you love, that you love that person. Absolutely. Okay, well then, if that is unconditional love, just always being in love.
And I think
Oh no, I know.
I think you've achieved that even outside of your daughter.
I know.
Because we can even forget man and women. I mean,
Yeah.
I know we're talking about Valentine's Day. Your mother, your
Of
father,
course, yeah.
you and I. Like, I mean, there's. It doesn't mean that we might get into an argument, right? I can think of one.
Yeah, we have.
Right? Yeah, okay. I can think of one. But it doesn't mean that, and even then, truly and truly, we didn't know each other as well, and we were sort of whatever it was. But I can honestly say now, regardless of what you do, we might decide not to talk to each other for a year, because maybe that's what we need to have our peace. Yeah. But does that necessarily have to mean that we don't?
Of course not. No.
That I don't love you.
Yeah.
So there's unconditional love even in that element.
But to me, I think that even just calling it, because to me, like I saw something once where people were talking about big love and little love, and to me, even calling it unconditional.
So you don't like the name. You don't like putting.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it should have a label at all.
But it serves a purpose in discussing it, because there are various different perceptions on what love is. So we kind of have to qualify it.
I get that, but to me, love just...
To me, we're qualifying it to get to a place of dequalifying it, or not qualifying it.
Which is where I think I'm already there. I'm already at the point of not qualifying it. Love just is.
In every situation? But no, are you there in your understanding? Or
in my understanding. What
about in your experience?
In my experience, like I said before, I can only put it on one person.
So your measuring stick is therefore your daughter.
My daughter.
You can gauge how far you are, or how
with anybody else.
With anybody else based on that.
Absolutely.
Based on that. Okay.
Yeah. And because for me and Michaela, love just is.
It just is.
It just is.
And for me, I can honestly say, and maybe, like I said, I think, children are blessings.
Yep, they're great conduits of teaching us purity.
But I can honestly tell you, in my experience, as much as I always wanted to have children, I remember, and I've told you this before, I remember being 7 years old and praying to God. And I'm going to qualify that based on what my understanding of God was at that time. For God to show me, earnestly, for God to show me what life is all about.
Yeah.
Because I think intuitively I knew that life was a lot bigger. There was so much more than what was being seen in front of me. And I'm of the opinion now, at 43 years old, my age, yesterday.
I'm a little older. It was her birthday yesterday. Happy birthday, Kristine.
Happy birthday. I'm of the opinion now that was probably my deepest heart's desire.
Yeah.
And I think that because of that, I've been sort of set on this path of discovery, that not having a child has probably been my biggest blessing. And it's a very
oh no,
weird
I
thing to say.
understand what you said.
It's been my biggest blessing, because it has it has sort of forced me to navigate my own way in this discovery of what love is, without having that instant knowledge, that instant understanding of it in that way. You know what I mean? So there's always this sense of not having. So I don't have a child. You don't have this. You don't have that. So you're always searching to maybe at the time you're trying to fill a void, or you're trying to whatever. So you go into different avenues to try to find those things. And I can honestly tell you that I really, truly feel that this unconditional love state is far more achievable than we even realize.
I think that we all have it running through us. You discovered yours at 7 years old, but I think that
I discovered
the wanting the knowledge of it. Yeah.
Of it. Yeah.
And I think that we all, that's why love is such a big, love is probably the biggest factor in everyone's life, of finding it, holding it, keeping it, wanting it. So that stream goes through us, which I do believe is from God, that I think he is unconditional love, if you want to call it that. He is the true purity of what love is. And he put that in us to find out what it is and to search for it. And I absolutely, where he's concerned, and I know I'm going biblical, but not biblical, but religious.
Well, even it's not,
but
it's not biblical or religious. Some people say source energy, some people say the universe.
I say God, and I call him by his name.
And I say, I interchange depending on.
But I believe that he instilled that in us because that was his whole purpose for creating us. He created us through love. So I think that's instilled in every one of us. Some people choose to ignore it and forget it. I think you and I have always been people that have always been searching, because we want to find the big answers. We want to know the truth. And that's, if there's one thing we are, we're truth warriors. Even at our own dismay. We will search for the truth because we live by the truth only, or try to. But I think that he put that in us, and you just discovered it younger, but I think all of us are on that journey trying to figure out, first of all, if that can be achievable here, but I